on the president's job plan and the Fed's move into QE3 is Peter Schiff, CEO of Euro Pacific Capital, fresh off his testimony to Congress last week on why the president's last 3 jobs plans, or is it 4, have failed. Now, the reason I like to have Peter Schiff on with us is he got ridiculed, as you know, many of you know, all over international television and major print publications for predicting the collapse of 2008, then for saying that all the stimulus and banker bailout wouldn't work. And now more and more they're finally listening to him, kind of like they're starting to listen to Congressman Ron Paul. Peter Schiff, of course, also has been one of the monetary advisors on economics for Congressman Ron Paul, and he joins us now. Peter, thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, you know, thanks for having me on, Alex. And I wish they were listening to me. I mean, maybe they're hearing me now, but I'm not sure they're actually listening to what I'm saying. They might be tuning it out.
Let's get into the testimony to Congress last week and basically what they asked you and how you responded.
Well, I mean, the whole idea, they wanted to have a hearing to try to figure out how to create jobs. And of course, that's what they like to do in Washington, is convene hearings. But the reality is they don't need a hearing to figure out why there's no jobs. All they need is a mirror. You know, and so I was there to try to, you know, let Congress know that they're the reason there's no jobs. If they want to wonder why, you know, why the jobs are disappearing, it's because of actions that government is taking that drives up the cost of employment, that punishes people for employing people, and that makes people look for all sorts of ways to avoid hiring, whether it's using automation or outsourcing or just simply, you know, just not growing a business. And so the only thing that government can really do to create jobs is to stop destroying them and destroying the incentives for the private sector to create the jobs.
I see varying reports from Spain, Portugal, where they've tried the failed green jobs, and now we know about the $500 million stolen, at least from by one of the Obama green energy job companies. But I was seeing numbers of tens of millions of dollars that it costs for every $50,000 job. I mean, surely, Peter, they're not this stupid. There's got to be some method to the madness. Isn't this more of a mafia government, and it's just about paying off their cronies?
Don't overestimate their intelligence. I've gotten in trouble overestimating people's intelligence before. But, I mean, either they're stupid or they're just trying to get elected and they don't care, or a combination of the two. But, you know, a lot of what Congress has to understand is we don't want jobs because we want to work. We want jobs because we want all the things that jobs produce. We want goods. We want to consume. We want to have a high standard of living. Jobs are a means. They're not an ends in and of themselves. And, you know, government can create work. They can make sure we all work really hard, but we have nothing to show for it. That's not what we want. We want productivity. And we're not going to get productive jobs from government. We're going to get that from profit-seeking entrepreneurs.
But was Congress receiving this information? I mean, did anything positive happen?
I don't know. Look, I had some good conversations. You know, I got Dennis Kucinich, who I was surprised. I had a nice discussion with him in private after the hearing. He's coming on my radio show on Friday on the Peter Schiff show. So, you know, and that's the Democratic side. So, I mean, he seemed that he was open to my ideas and he was willing to listen. But that's just one step. I mean, it's gonna take a lot more than one Democrat, you know, expressing an open mind. I mean, we actually need decisive action quickly. Because we're running out of time.
Well, I want to bring up a positive point. I have seen some mainstream articles with economists saying, look, we need to cut taxes, and then that will actually create more revenue. And something that big government engineers don't seem to understand is that, what in every case of history, and I want you to complement this information or expand on it, Peter, Kennedy cut the top tax rate by half. He cut the next tax rate by close to half. And tax receipts doubled. So the bureaucrats have to know that when they increase taxes like California's done or like Greece has done, that it takes an economy and puts it into a stall. So why are they doing this?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's politics. I mean, really, if they want the best taxes to reduce, to generate growth and additional income, is the marginal rate of taxes. But of course, that's what they're talking about increasing. But we have so much debt now, there's so much government spending, that it can't just be cutting taxes. we have to cut government spending, because if we replace tax revenue with deficits, that's going to do more damage to the economy. That's the point that I was trying to make in front of Congress. The deficits are actually doing more damage to the economy than the taxes. But yes, we need legitimate tax reform. We have to move away from punishing people for working hard, risking capital, and generating wealth. We need to move towards a consumption-based taxation system that doesn't damage economic growth. But at the same time, we have to stop all the government spending. That is the drag on the economy. It's the burden that government places on the economy that's depriving it of the resources that it needs to grow and create jobs.
Okay, well, that's common sense. And I agree with you that historically that's a no-brainer. But where you have really been stunningly accurate is in your basic overall projections and predictions of what was going to happen in the economy. In the intro, I mentioned a lot of the things that you were dead on about. And as a student of history, I can certainly see collapse, further dollar devaluation, a lot of horrors in the future as well. But specifically, looking forward on the course the world is now, QE3, the euro debt bubble, they're talking about transferring the euro into this new financial oligarchy. How do you see all of this basically shaking out?
Well, it's not going to be pretty. Again, it's like they're throwing gasoline on the fire and expecting the fire to go out. It's just going to get bigger. So, we have really severe structural problems underlying the economy. They've got to be fixed. The market wants to fix them, but the government won't let it because the government doesn't like the pain that we have to go through to fix these problems, just like a drug addict doesn't like rehab. And so maybe he doesn't want to go through it. He'd rather just keep using drugs. But that's not in his long-term interest. And it's not in the long-term interest of our economy to keep shooting us up with monetary heroin so that we're oblivious to the pain and don't go through the restructuring process. So as long as we're continuing on this course, we're going to keep going in the same direction, which means the economy will never recover. Good jobs will never be created. The standard of living of the average American will continue to decline. The cost of living will rise much faster than his wages, if he even has any wages, because jobs are going to be disappearing. And eventually it will end in anarchy. I mean, in riots, in civil duress. Who knows what the government is going to do under that environment, because we've lost so many of our rights under better circumstances. Imagine what the government might do when things got to that point. But that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to have a real painful crisis before our leaders do anything right, before they take a chance on not getting reelected in order to do what's good for the country.
Well, Peter, going back now more than 12 years ago, I went to different urban warfare events, different military drills. I put documentaries out showing the military training to lock down U.S. cities, training to confiscate firearms. People were so shocked by the footage I had in Police State 2000 that they didn't even think it was real. Now we've seen Katrina, we've seen other events, any excuse for a federal power grab. That's the appetite, grow, grow, grow. Now we see Mayor Bloomberg saying there's going to be riots if this continues. We see the degeneration in Europe. And I understand there's a lot of slugs and lazy people who are thinking short-term in government. But at the same time, there has been a authoritarian buildup behind the scenes in the last 12 to 15 years in this country. And if they weren't thinking about using martial law to impose their corruption a decade ago, they're certainly now starting to talk about it today. And you're starting to allude to some of that. So specifically, what do you think is coming in the future if the course is not changed? And do you think that the establishment is going to change course?
No, I said they're not going to change course as long as the world will keep lending its money. So as long as the Chinese are buying our debt and the Japanese and Saudis, and as long as we can go into debt, we're going to keep doing that. We're going to postpone the pain. But we're going to run into a problem very soon where we can't do that, where we have a dollar crisis, a sovereign debt crisis, where bond rates really start to surge, the dollar starts to plunge, prices really start to rise, and that's when the problems really set in. Because then what is the government going to do? How are they going to respond to skyrocketing food and energy prices. Are they going to put price controls in place like we did in the 1970s? That's when you get your shortages. That's when you get your riots. But even if we don't do that, if we embark on an austerity program, which would be the right thing, you know, the people who are used to getting government checks aren't going to take that line down. I mean, the people are going to be frustrated.
Well, that's my next question.
I mean, look what's happening in Italy or London or Greece. I mean, it's going to happen here, only I think worse.
Listen, I'm all for getting people off of dependency because we know it doesn't work. It creates generations of basically crime-addled, drug-addicted zombies. And we've got close to 50 million Americans, as you know, on the form of digital soup kitchens, bread lines, on the food stamps and little digital cards. But what about the corporate welfare? What about the trillions on defense? What about the trillions in banker bailouts? I mean, I've seen the numbers, but correct me if I'm wrong. We could get rid of all the entitlements and the rest of it, and still, if we don't say no to these derivatives and make Wall Street, the firms that sold this crap, take a haircut, we're still going to be in the same position.
Well, we have to end all forms of welfare or warfare. You know, we're broke, but politically it's hard to say that we're going to cut out the welfare that the middle class enjoys and continue to the largesse that the Wall Street bankers enjoy. We got to put an end to all forms of corporate welfare, government subsidies. We need to go back to free market forces. If you're going to succeed in this country, you succeed without help from the government. You succeed in the marketplace because you succeed in delivering a better product to your customers. You lower their costs, you increase the quality. You've got to earn your money. We got to take away this rent-seeking, the ability of politicians to dole out special favors in exchange for support that helps them get reelected. And that's special favors to Wall Street and Main Street. We have to level the playing field. We have to go back to a free market economy where government is insignificant in size and in influence. We want small government where we can have low taxes and we can take care of ourselves. We don't need to live in a nanny state in this social welfare program because it's bankrupted other countries in the past and it's bankrupting us now. And you know, when you have somebody like Mayor Bloomberg, when you and I were talking about riots years ago, and that was, oh, these guys are crazy, this is, you know, kookiness. Well, now you got mainstream guys like Bloomberg saying, we're going to have riots if things don't change. And I think Mayor Bloomberg is incorrectly looking for some government program to prevent the riots. It's these government programs that are ensuring the riots because the government programs can't work.
And when the government fails,
will only make the situation worse.
And when the government fails, it's a time bomb. This will be the last question because of your time and our constraints here on the Nightly News. But Congressman Ron Paul, I mean, obviously you're a supporter. What do you think of his run? I mean, is that not a silver lining that he's getting even more support than he got 3.5 years ago? A, and B, what do you think of the different dirty tricks and media tactics they've used against him? And
yeah, the media is completely, you know, trying their best to marginalize him. I mean, look, when Michelle Bachmann won Ames, she was all over the news, even though she barely beat Ron Paul, who wasn't even mentioned. Then just recently, Ron Paul wins a straw poll in California, the biggest state in the union, and there's no mention of it on the Sunday shows at all. He won in a landslide, and then, as a matter of fact, Texas just called off their straw poll because it looked like Ron Paul was going to win. And I guess the Republicans didn't want to see Rick Perry lose to Ron Paul in his home state. They thought that was too good a story for the media to ignore. So the way they got around it was they canceled the poll altogether. But look, he's running third. Ron Paul in the latest poll has as much support as Bachmann, Gingrich, Santorum, and what's his name? I can't even remember the guy's name.
Mitt Romney.
Not Romney.
Huntsman.
Huntsman combined. All four of those candidates combined. In fact, it came out that Ron Paul has got more contributions from the military than all of his Republican components combined. He's getting more contributions than Barack Obama.